All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Grim Litany of Librarians. Today, I'm joined by our guest, Emmy Award-winning Sean Van Damey.
Howdy.
Sean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, by trade, I'm a video news editor, and then I write adventures for the Grim Perilous Library. I've written some for the DM's Guild, and recently I was a developmental editor on Flames of Freedom, which comes out next year and is powered by Spyhander. So, for all your American Revolutionary War fun times. Um, but mainly I've been writing adventures for the Grim and Perilous Library. I've got a campaign. If you look up the Concordance of Freedom, and that is a whole thing will be coming out in print soon. Soon being operative.
Now, when you
Um,
when you say Flames of Freedom is coming out next year, do you mean 2020 or
or
2022?
yeah, 21. It's still early in January. It still feels like it's 2020. So yeah, it comes out this year.
Yeah, it's coming out later this year. And
Oh, off to a good start.
we're off to a wonderful start here. Um, let's see. So Sean is joining me here today, so we could talk about writing scenes for your adventures, which is something that Sean is clearly quite experienced at doing.
I've written a lot of scenes for a lot of adventures.
Yeah. So,
Um,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to go for.
So I was. What techniques do you personally use when you're writing your scenes for your adventures?
So usually I come into every scene. I've got I usually have an outline. Because I outline everything I'm going to write just on yellow legal pads. So I come into the scene with kind of just like 2 or 3 paragraphs of prose. It's like, what's the goal of the scene? What are some evocative things that I've like kind of pictured happening in the scene? What characters are there? And then I kind of just start writing it out kind of in that prose style. Lately I've been using the five senses plus witch sight from the standards that Grim and Perilous uses, which kind of gives you it forces you to kind of break down your scenes sense by sense. So you get a feel as you go into it then, and you can kind of pull your little evocative bits and you kind of spice them in there instead of a big wall of read aloud text, which I love read aloud text as a writer, but I don't always use it as a DM.
Uh,
And then, as I get into the scene, I just kind of logically feel out how it's going to go and what I think players are going to do and just try to kind of get to that. But I always know what the end point
speaking
goal is.
speaking of boxed text, we forgot to turn our web captions on.
Oh, we did. We did. There you go. Now there's captions. We were talking about box text. I apologize for forgetting to do this.
All right. Well, I mean, I forgot to do it myself too. It happens.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. No.
yeah. So you like to, so you like writing boxed text, and you like to also go with the five senses, including and which site, which is a sixth
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Um, like I know the weaknesses of box text and that as a GM, you do kind of for the rest of the scene have to pull all those pieces. Like you have to break down the box text as a GM,
Right.
and then even reading it, players sometimes check out. Excuse me. So like as an exercise as a writer, since I used to write novels before I wrote adventures, like me, I love sitting at the computer and writing box text, but I realize it's not as useful as it could be at the table. Like little, like 2, 3 sentences of box text can be useful, but I think sometimes at the top of the scene, we get a little too happy with our own creative writing and we'll leave these huge boxes and that's can be problematic. Um, So I like, because I've already thought about all those five senses things. Having them broken up forces me to really kind of put them into a solid writing, and that helps me get into the scene as I'm going into it. And then I know, okay, so like my outline might say, we're in uh, the party enters the tower. They've been chased by the undead. In the tower, I know that I've got these three clues for a mystery, and then uh, your ally on the top of the tower is going to be infected by darkness, and mutants are going to come up from the basement. I know that's how the scene ends, and then I know kind of what we want to have happen in the middle of the scene. And then, so having all of that in my outline, I can then logically kind of just work my way through the scene. So I'm kind of one of those writers who's in the middle of the outliner, and then there's the pantster. It's just someone who kind of flies by the seat of their pants.
Right. And
So I know I have all my like landmarks outlined, and then I kind of feel how to get to each one of them.
right. I think a lot more people are in the middle of being the pantser versus the plotter.
Yeah, that's the one
Um,
word I wanted.
because that's also where I comfortably write. Like, whenever I was writing, for example, for my own adventure, I had a like an outline of I want these characters in this scene, and then I want these characters in this scene here, and I want the players to do this thing here. And so what I would do with that is interesting. What I would do with that is I would then go when I was actually writing the paragraph. I would write the paragraph
Uh-huh.
out, um, and expand upon that. Sort of like drawing from the snowflake method of writing, which is where you
Right.
start with the core concept and then you build it out from the core concept.
Right. Kind of like the thought bubbles,
Mm-hmm.
which I remember those were very popular when I was in like elementary school and high school. They're like, well, you need to outline your essay with the thought bubbles. You've got your thesis, and then your like all your branching ideas. And I guess
Right.
that kind of can work in an adventure or a scene, because you've got the goal of the scene, which I guess is your thesis, and then kind of the thought bubbles are like NPCs, and like usually a scene I know it's going to have a social interaction or a chase or a combat or it's overland. Kind of what's the game mechanic of the scene,
Right.
because then you're going to want to build your scene, or that's how I'm going to build around. Because if it's a combat scene, you want to make sure in the introduction part of it that you establish the location in very game mechanic-y kind of ways. Like, well, here's your cover, here's high things, and then very much know who the combatants are going to end up being, and kind of so that as the players are starting the scene, they get a feel for what the scene is going to end up being. So if it's like a chase, you want to build the people who are going to be in the chase, where you're going to be going, um, and things like that. Um, So like I'm about to start writing a chase in something that I'm working on. And so I'm thinking about, all right, so who's getting chased? Well, the party's getting chased. So who's doing the chasing? What's the location? Where are they going? And how do I get all of that information into like two paragraphs, three paragraphs of text right off the bat? And so that's like a lot of that early planning thought of a scene. Is like, so I've just got to get, and without making it boring, like, all right, so, because if you look at the chase rules, like that's a lot of under the hood
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm
But
familiar with the chase rules. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like, but you don't want to show any of that to your, well, you show some of it to them, but like you don't want to, I don't know, burden them with a lot of those numbers.
Right. Like like for example, in the in between, which we were playing with Matt Jowett on Wednesdays, which I think you wrote that one.
Yeah,
There is a chase scene um, in the, I want to say it's like what, the second part of it,
it's the beginning of Act 3.
beginning of Act 3. Yeah, so basically in that one, like you like you set it up, where the players meet this caravan,
Hmm.
and they also got sucked into the in between with as well.
Right.
And um, you the way Matt handled that was awesome. Like, uh, it didn't feel like we didn't have anything. It felt like we all had something that we could contribute to that chase.
Right. I mean, you're definitely trying to figure out ways to not, when you're like writing something like a chase or a combat, is you're trying to figure out, well, how do I make sure that the all the players can contribute
Mm-hmm.
something? Because like that's a chase that's on a wagon and you're
Right.
being chased by zombies. So like you can do things to help the wagons. There's other people there that you can, lend aid to, or they're falling off. So you like it's not just running or shooting back or whatever.
Right. It
You know,
makes it a more dynamic experience.
right. If you've got your face character, they could be trying to help one of the people who's, driving the wagon, steal their resolve to not, falter into fear and things like that.
Right.
Because you don't want chase scenes to just turn into kind of round robin rolling.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Because that's very much not fun.
right. Um, I always, when I'm thinking about something like a chase scene, and I know we're harping on chase scenes now, I go back to the skill challenges from fourth edition D&D as kind of a baseline. I like how that let everyone do something
Mm-hmm.
without it just being like a group check. It forced you to really think about what your skills were and how you could use them.
Right.
Because once someone used one skill, you couldn't use it again that round. And
Right.
then you could only use the same skill once in the skill challenge. So it forces everyone to really kind of use all the skills they have instead of falling back on the like two things you're good at.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. Like, I know that June, in that chase scene in the in between, like her thing was running and athletics stuff. So that's like what we had her doing, was doing that, the athletics check stuff, and running to try and sort of distract the horde from chasing the wagon itself.
Right.
Um, whether or not that, like that was exciting, for like for me as a player.
Right. And that's always the goal, is for it to be exciting, for everyone to be excited and feel useful.
Yeah.
Um, so I always try to kind of figure out how I can have something for everyone to do in the scene. So like even if it's a straight combat scene, it's like, well, is there a way that we can use our non-combat characters? Because like Spyhander's full of characters who excel at everything but combat sometimes.
Yeah. Like there's like what, 86 professions.
90 some if you've got main gauche, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think actually it might be closer to like 101 with main gauche. Or
Yeah,
it's a lot. The point
it's a
is,
lot.
it's a
It's a
whole
big
lot.
number.
It's a very big number, and like most of them are your everyday peasants,
Mm-hmm.
or people who are like, who aren't necessarily combat trained, and they get thrust into these situations where combat's a thing that they have to think about.
Yeah, and so you have to, as you're designing those kind of scenes, you have to think, well, what does the peasant or the camp follower or the burgermeister, do in a combat situation? So you try to have some things floating around in your scenes
Mm-hmm.
where everyone can participate. You don't want to get you don't want your scenes to get too narrowly focused in that way. You want to have a nice narrow focus, but you want to have kind of options for people to move around and affect the scene.
Right. It's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, because otherwise you get your rails need to be wibbly wobbly
Hmm.
and not too brittle. Because as soon as you have a scene with brittle rails, players are going to snap those in half instantly.
Right. Like in my
Um,
in my own experiences with as a player, that's the thing that I have done is I've figured out ways to like. There was an example where I was playing an evil character in D&D 3.5, and the GM had a situation where like this I think it was like a child minotaur came out on this gladiator field, and like we were supposed to like feel like moral, like it was supposed to be like a morally reprehensible thing to fight this child minotaur, and
right,
my character being evil was just like, I mean, we're here to fight it in this gladiator thing, and so what he did was he killed it, and that initiated the bigger combat with the mama minotaur, who was upset
right,
obviously. But like I don't know if my GM expected my characters to actually have no problems killing the minotaur.
right. And I a question I ask myself almost any time I'm going to put an NPC on the field is, can the adventure stand them to die?
Mm-hmm.
And do I have a plan for them dying?
Mm-hmm.
Because players are notorious for killing NPCs that you didn't want to die. So like always question yourself when you're going to put someone, you know, on the field. Well, how do I, especially if it's your big bad evil guy,
Mm-hmm.
how do I make sure they don't die here in the first scene of the first act of the beginning of this campaign? So like always keep that in mind when you're designing your scenes. It's like, all right, I try to think like when I'm outlining a scene, like I have some players that are no like, so my wife can break a scene without even trying. She's one of those players that's like, I'm a bard and I'm just going to talk to everything. And so what I try to do is put on that hat when I'm writing. It's like, all right, so how would she break this? And then figure out ways to like have contingency plans built into the kind of the flow and the
Right.
essence, and not lay kind of brittle rail.
Right.
Because sometimes you can go, oh, I see the scene, and like, well, I'm not writing a book, I'm writing an adventure, and adventures have an unstable element running throughout the entire thing, which is the players. You
Absolutely.
have to kind of always be thinking about that. And I think one thing I also try to not do is over describe something that is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Because I find constantly when I'm playing that there'll be something that has a cool description, but it is utterly irrelevant to the scene, and immediately that is like mana to players, and they will try to solve it. They will fixate on it. Like there's in Princes of the Apocalypse, there's this random lich in one of the dungeons who doesn't attack you. He's just there, and he's a non-hostile. And my players ran into him, and he became their friend. Like they've made comics about him. Like they were obsessed with this lich that didn't want to kill them,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost derailed the adventure. And it's like, what was the point of putting him there? He's too high of a level for the dungeon. He's non-combatant. He doesn't. And he's not a part of the story. It's just a weird thing that was there. And so I try to always, as I'm putting like the little frills on an adventure, make sure that they don't overshadow the scene itself,
Right.
because your players will always latch on to the weirdest thing.
Right, and that, I have an experience. I've had an experience with that myself. Like I was running, it was a 3.5 game. Um, that some people who I was friends with on another site, they're like, yeah, let's do you want to run a game for us? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll run a game for you. And I described one of the walls had like a diamond engraved in it. So like it was like a diamond shape. It wasn't an actual diamond. But the player, I guess, misheard me, or I didn't explain it very well, and for some reason thought that it was an actual diamond in the wall, and was trying to pry it out. And like
Yeah,
I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure out why he was trying to pry it out, and it turns out he thought it was an actual diamond.
right.
And so like that's a situation that I've had. Like I have to keep in mind that if players think that something's valuable, they're gonna latch onto it.
Yeah, yeah. Always like so. And you find that like when you're going back through and editing, you can all immediately start to see kind of because when I'm writing a scene or anything, I don't usually go back and look at it until I'm done with the whole of the adventure. Because if I stop and go back and try to edit while I'm writing, I'll get in one of those circular loops of fine tuning,
Yep, yep.
and then you never finish. Um, and it doesn't matter how good a scene is if the rest of the adventure is not done and it doesn't come out. Which is something I've picked up from years in news. We always say it doesn't matter how good that package looks. If you missed slot, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I barrel through, write the whole thing, and then I go back and I start to dissect each scene to make sure that I didn't, you know, over flourish something or, get too narrow in the focus of how to get through it. And then that's, you're really trying to, it's all that balance of, kind of rolling out the scene. And I feel like every scene needs an introduction, something in the middle that kind of turns it on its head, and then how it ends. So like there's a scene in the fourth part of the Concordance of Freedom where you are sent to a tenement house to meet a concordant spy. And you're in this city, you have no weapons, you're gathering evidence for your trial. Because the people of this city have this you're guilty until proven innocent, and it's the accused's job to gather the evidence for their trial and present it. So the whole thrust of that act is you're gathering pieces of information.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sent to this tenement house by uh, a shady contact to find this old concordance contact, and you get there. You meet these two people. You've It's set up that you're maybe being followed like a little bit in the lead up, but then you get the information and then immediately the door gets broken down. There's people coming in, and if they catch you here, they're going to throw you out a window, which is how they execute people in that city. They throw them out of this high tower. Um,
Defenestration.
yes. Um, yes, indeed. I love that word, which is why we became their execution method. Um, because defenestration is a great word, and I've never written around vocabulary before, never. Um, but so like that's that middle part of the scene is when the door gets broken down, and then it turns into a small chase as you have to go through the fire escape and escape from this tenement district. So that's one scene, and it's got this lead up, this bang, and then kind of the fall, and it's got this good, rising falling action, which all scenes kind of should have. So you have to
Right.
think about scenes in that way, not just links in a chain.
Right. Um, kind of like with movie writing, or like even really like even storytelling, because like essentially like an adventure is a story.
Yeah,
So you have to have your rising action and then your falling action.
right. It's your like when you're building a whole adventure or a whole campaign, like it's all kind of big pyramid, littler pyramid. It's all the same um like concept of rise, climax, fall, rise, climax, fall. You're just, as you move in, it gets more and more specific. So whereas it might be the rising action is we're escaping from Mullensburg, we're seeing the war, we know that the Baron has fallen to evil, and we have to get everyone together. And then it's getting everyone together, the final fight, and then it's over. And that might be the rise, climax, fall, the whole, 300-page adventure. And then you need the rise and the fall of each section, the rise and fall of each scene. And so it's all about kind of whittling it down as you're writing. You have to start with that big picture, and then you narrow your picture in further and further.
Right.
Because in the end, a scene in an adventure, it's all the same structure. Um, and
It's
so you're just trying to find all those beats, and that's where your outline helps, because you know your beats, and then you can find them, and then figure out how your players are going to break them, and then restructure and strengthen them.
yeah, like with the Beast of Jellen's Mire, like I have a scene. I've run the game for like 3 or 4 times now, and people in the 3 of those 4 times that I've run the scene, there is an NPC and at the tavern. She's in Orcs, and my players 3 out of 4 times flirted with her. And like I just threw this Orcs in there because I was like I want to have some I want to like really emphasize that this setting is different than like the humanocentric setting of Zweihander itself, of the implied setting of Zweihander. Because like I don't think I've seen many adventures that get away from the humanocentrism.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was important to put in an Orcs bouncer. That's because that's what she was. She was a bouncer, and like I said, they like always flirted with her 3 out of 4 times, and then I realized, okay, I'm gonna put in a little thing here, which was at Tyler's suggestion, to like remind the GMs and the players that it's okay to be uncomfortable with your players doing this to this character, and it's okay
Right.
to enforce boundaries, because that's a thing that had happened to me 3 times.
Yeah. Like players will flirt. There was I forget what I was working on. I think it was just a homebrew adventure, and I did a horny pass on it
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I have horny players who will flirt with everything. Let me do a pass and see where this might happen. And that's the same group. I also do an animal pass because I started playing with a lot of vet students, which is when I got back into D&D. And my wife was in vet school, so I was running with a whole bunch of, you know, veterinarians who are obsessed with animals. So like there's a sidebar in Missing in Mullensburg where you go and you kill some man-eating wolves, and they have babies. And there's a sidebar that's like, oh, so you want to raise wolves? Because I was like, players are going to do this.
Yeah.
They're going to want to raise these baby wolves. And a GM is going to have no idea what to do here, but I can take three little paragraphs real quick and codify this because I knew that was going to be a thing. It was going to happen. And so I take animal passes now because I know those are things that people get stuck on. Cute animals, horses, in anything people will like. So you're looking for those things. Same with, you're looking for, well, who are they going to flirt with? Who are they going to try to seduce? Because there's always the trope of the horny bard. There's always
Yeah.
someone who wants to play that character.
Yeah.
Um, Clearly they need to play the horny paladin, but
Oh my goodness.
so I'm always thinking about those things when I'm going back through, kind of through the edit, or even when I'm just writing. Like, well, how, what are they going to do? Because you always assume we make a lot of assumptions when we're
Right.
writing adventures. Um, and there's always going there's and I've met some newer writers who they get hung up on trying to assume and then plan for everything in the text that can happen. They're like, well, I saw that the players could do this or this or this, so I need to write a solution for it. And you can't. That's just there's not enough words, there's not enough space.
Right. Not
You
enough
will never
time.
finish the scene. You'll sit there and you'll be it's the same like kind of trying to plan for what players are going to do is like trying to balance combat encounters. It's it's a noble effort, but in the end, it's kind of a flawed concept. It's all you'll get there. You just give the GM enough that they have an idea of what they're going through and some tools to work with it because you can't plan for every party.
Yeah, like um for example, with one of the runs I did of the Beast of Jellen's Mire, the party, one party had camped on the bridge itself because there's a bridge in it, um, near this in the swamp, and
Right.
they camped on the bridge itself, which is like the way I had planned for it, more or less, for that
Mm-hmm.
was for them to chase from the bridge. But
Right.
but the other group, what they did was they camped upstream from the bridge, closer to where the beast's lair is. So like on the fly, I had to go. Okay, what do I do for this? Like I had planned for them to be over here, but they're
Right.
over here instead. So I had to come up with that on the fly, and like, and that's okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It's you've got to. It's a balance, like as the when you're writing of being in your head, but being able to get out of your own
Mm-hmm.
way, because you just you can never plan enough in a scene, but you can never plan too little either. As long as you've given the GM an evocative setting with some cool details and they are clear on what the beats are, the GM will get their players from meeting the spy in the tenement house to the door being broken in to them escaping from the tenement district. Like as long as the GM knows the beats, kind of where the A, the B, the C, and then has some cool little stuff floating in between that they can play with, the GM will make it happen. Because like that's our job as adventure writers is to we're telling a story, yes, but we're also presenting a story toolbox as opposed to a story narrative.
Right.
Because like if I was gonna write the in between, so it's what 52, 53 pages. It's 52 pages as an adventure. But if I was writing that as a prose, it'd be probably 300 or 400 pages, and that doesn't an adventure doesn't need that much stuff. And even if we were to take out, that would be invented characters and whatnot. You still don't need that much. We overthink and overwrite a lot. Like I read a lot of adventures that I'm like, this is overwritten. I don't need all of this. And sometimes all of that extra overwrittenness leads to the rails being very brittle.
Right.
Because I mean, every adventure, unless it is explicitly like a hex crawly sandbox, is on some kind of rails. I think the idea of railroading gets a bad rap because people assume that it's no player agency as opposed to it's player agency. You're just trying to keep them going in a singular direction where
Right.
they have agency in the story, but the story is still going somewhere.
Right. Like I think the best uh the best D&D adventure that I've experienced with this has been the Curse of Strahd adventure.
Yeah.
Because like I mean it's non-linear by the nature of the Taraka readings,
Mm-hmm.
But even if you did the Taraka readings the same way and it was the same results every time, each party's gonna each party is going to approach these things in a different way.
Right. And all you're doing with that deck is you're just establishing what your rails are.
Yeah, exactly.
Because all right, that adventure starts. We're in the town of Barovia, and then we're gonna go meet Madame Eva, and then we're gonna get our reading, and that's gonna tell us where our MacGuffins are. And we always know that ends. We go to the castle. We fight Strahd,
Yeah.
and all it's doing is it's just it's letting it's an that deck is an illusionary
Mm-hmm.
set of rails, because that's all it is. It's just establishing the rails from a set of, you know, X amount of options, but it's all still kind of railish.
Right.
It just lets the players pull them from a deck. And I
Right.
think that's what's cool, because it still keeps the adventure structured. And I mean, also the far too often when we're writing sandboxes, this is a slight tangent, we feel the need that the sandbox needs to be huge and expansive, and the players could do a whole campaign in the sandbox and ignore the story that is also there. And in that case, just write a sandbox. Um, you don't need um, like Tomb of Annihilation for 5e has this great sandbox that is utterly irrelevant to the adventure at hand. Like they establish a ticking clock, and there's high stakes, and then there's a dungeon you have to go through to solve the mystery, and then there's this sandbox that you don't want to interact with because you've got a ticking clock, but
Yeah.
it's all full of cool stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, so when you're designing, you have to pick one sometimes. Is it a sandbox, or is it a more linear structure? And same with your scene, you don't want to, if we kind of boil that way down to the macro, um yeah, that's right, but level, you're looking at it, you don't want to have all that too much extraneous, because then the players and the GM will get lost in just too much detail, um too much just stuff that isn't important, because a scene needs to, when you're writing it, you have to kind of gauge, all right, this scene should take about 45 minutes of game time, roughly.
Right.
Like most scenes, that's kind of the default, is you're looking at about 45 minutes a scene, and like 2 to 3 scenes a session. And so as soon as your scenes start to bloat and expand, especially if you've put too much in, and that helps you kind of rein it, you got to pull it back, because the thing is, players are going to go off on their own directions, the GM is going to invent things. Don't waste your creative energy inventing those things that will probably not be used.
Yeah. Because like with for example with Curse of Strahd, again like this is the D&D fifth edition. This is the D&D adventure that I've run the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, back when I was still running D&D. Curse of Strahd, like you have like a whole like 52 different locations, I think.
Uh-huh.
Or not like not, I don't think it's actually like 52, but like you have a whole bunch of different uh things that your players will never have a reason to go to, never have a reason to explore because the MacGuffin's not there.
Yeah, and they're cool, but
Mm-hmm.
if the MacGuffin's not there, you don't need to go to the Amber Temple if the MacGuffin's not there.
Yeah, or
Or
the Drowned
oh,
Village.
yeah. So they're cool, and I've been in games where the GM wants you to go to all those places because they're cool and they're fun, but at the same time, you can run it very streamlined.
Yeah,
And I try to kind of keep that in mind when I'm writing um, scenes, because you don't want your. It's fun to have the option of a sandbox, but the sandbox needs to be constrained, and the choice is more of an illusion
mm-hmm.
than legitimately you can do anything you want, at least from a writing standpoint. I mean, the players can do whatever they and the GM want to do, but like I was in the middle of Concordance. You're in this city, and it's in the middle of a civil war. There's two sides, and you get this list of people to go essentially murder
Right.
for the high justice. And some of them are guilty, some of them are not, and they're spread around, and their whole point is to move you around the city, is and then because the whole thrust of that part of the adventure is just cross the river, get a key, come back, open the door, and then the people who you thought were on your side come in and they sack the city.
Right.
Because I stole that from Game of Thrones. But that's so the whole of that act of the adventure is just that: go here, get this, go here, open the door.
Mhm.
That's it. That's the triangle. But to make it not feel so bland, and to give the city something to do, and because that would be like 15 pages, and I wanted this to be like 50 pages, um, you put things in to give it that illusion of you have more choices. So you've got these people you can go and murder, you've got spies you can help. So it's all open world stuff, but it all has to funnel right back into the scene and the story you're telling. You can't have, as soon as you have extraneous parts, that's what's going to get latched onto and it's going to derail you.
Right.
And kind of you have to question everything you put in. Is, will this destroy the story I'm telling? Will this, if something bad happens to this, will it derail? And so it's all a gauge of kind of hiding the structure of the scene so that it's not outwardly apparent but clearly there because the adventure needs it.
Right. I keep thinking of this cartoon I saw. Not cartoon like not like cartoon in like animated cartoon, but like a almost
Comic.
like a political like comic. There we go. Where it's like I guess there's like I think it's a cow or something, and then there's a funnel, but they put a line like a wall. They put a wall on the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, so that way it looks like that the funnel has a left and a right choice, but they both lead the same path.
Yeah. um it's in the end it's all sort of illusionary, about the because everything is kind of on a rail.
Mm-hmm.
And so the scenes all your scenes need to have their structure, and then their structure leads to the next scene, to the next scene. 'Cause it's all a chain that you're just trying to string along.
Right,
And it's just kind of, how do I string it in a way where it's flexible but without it snapping?
right. Like the games like Dishonored or Thief or Deus Ex, they're really good for that kind of stuff to draw inspiration from.
Right.
Because like you have multiple ways that you can deal with the each scene, so to speak, in it. So like for Dishonored, you could for all of these games actually, you could do a straight stealth one, or you could do a frontal assault.
Right.
I think with Thief, you're supposed at least the Xbox 360 reboot encourages you to do the stealthy options as much as possible.
Yeah, I remember playing Thief, the original PC version, and it was all about stealth and timing, and because everyone compared it to like Metal Gear Solid
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. And yeah, so like, yeah, so it's all like in the end. So like, whether you go in guns blazing or you sneak through the air vent, or you hack your way through so that the security turrets,
Mm-hmm.
do the fighting for you, whatever, you all still get to that end point, and that's what you're gauging in your scenes: is start, the end, and kind of your middle thing. And then the rest of it's just kind of you're presenting the toolbox.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of adventure writers and a lot of GMs are very attached to the story they're telling, and they they create a lot of brittle rails that break. They all write Dragon Heist, and they all immediately have it fall apart after 5 seconds of players asking like two questions.
Yeah.
I know we keep harping back to D&D adventures, but um, I run a lot of D&D because I play at night after everyone is like frazzled, and so no one wants to think too hard,
Mm-hmm.
and so you fall back on what we have been doing for years.
Right. And
Um,
D&D is easy to pick up. D&D is easier to pick up.
yeah, so like you want to have all your rails, and you got to think about like things, and there are some things you could just never plan for in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think about magic when I'm writing scenes
Right.
unless the magic is key to the scene. Like if I'm sending them to find a augur so they can talk to a corpse. I don't think about magic because you cannot plan for magic. Like Zweihander doesn't have as much magic, but you can't plan for it.
Yeah.
If you're writing something that's high fantasy, you absolutely cannot plan for magic. So don't even try. I I mean try like cuz you know the rules enough that you have it in the back of your head, but don't get caught up in going, well, I have to plan for this spell and this spell and this spell. It's
Right.
like, yes, someone's going to come in, and you're right. You've got these three NPCs who are great liars, and that paladin's going to use Zone of Truth. It just that happens. You can't plan around because then you take away all the players' cool toys by trying to plan around their magic.
Right. Like I had when I was thinking of writing for the DM's Guild, I was working on a level 20 dungeon crawl with a death tyrant, which is like a beholder, but like the undead
Mm-hmm.
version of them. So it's like just
Yeah.
a floating beholder skull. And the death tyrant had made in the walls of its lair tunnels that it could go through to shoot from peepholes, like little loopholes in the walls that it made from the
Right.
roof. And like when I was writing that adventure, I forgot I was writing for a level 20 group, which would have access, almost near unlimited access to things like Misty Step.
Uh huh.
So, in one of the test runs of the dungeon crawl, one of my players used Misty Step to teleport into the beholders or into the death tyrant's little peephole area
Tunnels.
tunnels. Yeah, and I didn't account for that, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna let that happen, um, because it was a clever way of using that spell. Um, but it definitely like I didn't think that was gonna happen.
Yeah. It just you can't. It's so hard because it trying to plan for magic is it's probably the second largest uh, uncontrollable variable, right behind the player's own kind of whims.
Mm-hmm.
And because it can be so powerful and so unbalancing that this is one reason why I like writing low level adventures, like basic tier 1 to 5, because I don't have to. Then I really don't have to think about game breaking magic because it's not an option.
Right.
Um, but when as soon as it becomes an option, you can't balance for it. Um, like I like sometimes just even if the text acknowledges that you're right, like you're right, this spell will bypass this trap. Um, which is one thing I liked about Tomb of Annihilation. There's like three really complicated traps that Spider Climb will utterly bypass. And it says it right in the text that it's like, or your player can Spider Climb through this and flip the switch and then everyone's hunky dory.
Yeah.
And because they're acknowledging that, yes, if you have this, this can happen. And don't, it's giving the GM permission not to fret and to feel like their cool trap has been diffused, or their subterfuge or their mystery or whatever
has,
um,
right, has been negated.
has been negated. Because again, that's that push and pull when you're reading the scene. You're like, well, how can I make the players, or writing the scene, how can I make the players be the stars and be cool without sacrificing the GM's fun of getting to play cool NPCs, but then not letting them outshine the player characters. And that goes back to the, just don't. So it's all push and pull as you're kind of designing your scene, and so like that's why I kind of, as I'm editing, kind of do passes where I'm like, well, here's how they might break this, here's how they might break that, who are they going to flirt with,
Right.
did I put any animals in here needlessly, um children, I try to pull children out too, because that's a trigger point that if you
Right.
don't need, don't put it in your adventure.
Right. Yeah.
um I've learned that the hard way, is that that is a touchy subject. um so like if they don't need to exist, just don't put them there,
Yeah. No. Yeah. No.
because
For sure.
you'll have one group that will kill them, one group that'll do everything to save them, and if an NPC kills them, it can throw everything off. So just cute animals and kids, if they don't need to be there, sometimes it's best to just not put them there, because they're always weak points.
Yeah. I think the quick start for, actually, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that, about the quick start adventure for Flames of Freedom. Um.
I mean, it has a kid, because
Yeah.
the hook is you're looking for
You're looking for the kids. Yeah.
a missing child. I mean, I'm not. We won't spoil the adventure, but that is the hook
Yeah.
for the Sin Eater.
Yeah.
So, and like that's one where, without getting into spoilers, you have to think. All right, you know, you have immediately introduced a touchy thing into your scene. Um, and like whenever I'm writing scenes, I'm I constantly kind of look at each scene, each area, and I'm like looking for those trigger points.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm doing it as I'm writing the scenes, it's easier when I'm writing the front matter of the whole adventure to put a bunch of trigger warnings in. Because I think about that like I'm describing the rating on a movie.
Right.
So if you're thinking about all those things as you're writing, it's easier to do it when you go back at the end and you're writing up your paragraph on game safety, because I have a canned paragraph and then I've got a specific paragraph, and I always drop the canned paragraph in, and the specific one is one of the last things I write, because I can't write it until I've written the adventure.
Right.
So if you're thinking about all those trigger points in your scene, you question yourself, do I need them? Because if you don't need them, it's best to take them out, because they can derail the story you're telling.
Right.
So if you don't need kids, you don't need, and there are other things that I know I will never touch. And so if I see a way a scene could go that way, I then immediately try to rewrite it. Like in an adventure, I am never going to touch things like, uh, sexual assault or that kind
Yeah.
of violence.
Yeah.
I will, and I write violent adventures. And you've read the in between. But
I've played it. I haven't read it
yeah,
yet.
you've played it. So like I know, like I'm looking for trigger points where it could easily either be construed that way, or the players could fall into something that even looks like those topics that I'm not going to touch. And then I can go, no, no, we need to yank that back and like just, slide a wall there. So we realize, no, no, it's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So you're looking for all the ways where your scene can get needlessly derailed, but you still have all that freedom that you want.
Yeah.
Because you want just options as opposed to pure freedom.
Right. Like it's you want a like an all you can eat buffet, but you don't want like an all you can eat buffet at three different locations.
Right. I'm at Yeah, if I went to a Golden Corral, I want or a Sizzler. I'm trying to think of chains that are in California. Like if you go to a American style buffet, you want mac and cheese and fried chicken and wings
Right.
and mashed potatoes. But if I went to a Chinese buffet, I want noodles and rice and my General Tso's chicken. But I don't necessarily want those two things together.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's you got to figure out how to not run it all into each other. Because when you're grand designing as it is, it's very easy to be all over the place. That's one thing also where sticking to your style guide
Hmm.
will really help. Like when I'm writing a scene, I will go and pull all the headings that I know I need and all the pieces of the style guide. And usually I take a published adventure and I literally drop it into my document and then pull everything but the headings out. And then it's just a matter of me filling in my scene into the established headings, which A gives me the format and it gives me structure. And it helps keep the scene, keep me from going crazy in
Yeah.
the scene.
Like something that I did when I was doing the layout work for the Beast of Jellensmeyer was I pulled out fake play. I read fake play
Mm-hmm.
and sort of used that to inform my structure on how I wanted to start how I wanted to do the adventure. Um, when I was doing my own layout work, so that a lot of that really informed how I structured the book itself.
Yeah.
Um, and then I did the same thing. Like I went through and read A Bitter Harvest
Mm-hmm.
at the back of the core rulebook as well. And I think I also and then I got a Night of the Vivimancer and read that as well. And
And that's totally out of and that and I didn't structure that in the same way that Grim and Perilous structures theirs. That reads more like a 5e adventure
yeah, it,
with
it
box text and uh, kind of that weirder flow.
it does. And like I was able to go, okay, now that I've read three different adventures written without box text, I was able to better understand why boxed text exists. And
Yeah,
so I included a bit of boxed text in The Beast Jellen's Mire. Not for every scene, but like for the scenes where like the GM needs something to get started.
yeah. It's always good. Like a little bit of it is great. It's a spice, and I realize I've over seasoned a lot of my adventures with it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to rein back in that spice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like when I was working on Sin Eater for the Flames of Freedom Quick Start, is that we took a previous adventure and then we rewrote it for the new system. I literally just took a scene, a section out of Boston Besieged, plopped it in, and then tore out all the Boston stuff and used that as my skeleton
Right.
when I went to rewrite. So I had a guide, and it helps keep you structured and on your straight and narrow because you don't want to just because you're trying to just not overwhelm yourself as a writer because you
Yeah.
don't want to have too much rolling around in your head. Because if you want to just get lost in the world you're building and create some adventure writers need to be writing books. Um, and I don't say that dismissively, like, oh, you're a bad adventure writer, go write novels. It's like you have all these great ideas. You have a story that will work better as a piece of prose
Mm-hmm.
or a screenplay because you have to. I mean, at the core level, when you're figuring out what story you want to tell, there are just stories that work better in games, that work better in movies, that work better in books. Like mysteries are exceedingly hard to do as a game
Right.
at a table. Whereas the heroic power fantasy is super easy to do at the table. The MacGuffin chase is very easy to do at a table. I mean, hell, a MacGuffin chase is great. If you can identify a MacGuffin in every scene, whether it's a real thing or not, it can just be like an idea, a piece of information. Um, like I think about those a lot. It's like what is kind of the thing that's the driver, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in the end important.
Right, like in in the in between in the tavern section, like the big main MacGuffin is getting the bride's wedding ring,
Right.
but there's a bunch of other like important details too that are like only important for providing information as to what actually has happened here in the tavern.
Right.
Uh,
The ring itself is a thing you just need to move the logistical plot.
yeah,
And while you're looking for it, you're going to learn a whole bunch of other stuff. It's the driver that in the end is not is once you get out of Act Two, the ring is not important anymore. You've put Josephine to rest. Yeah, I reuse names too much, and then I confuse myself inside of my own adventures and work.
yeah. I think if I remember
Um,
correctly, we had that issue. We had that issue actually on the in between. I think Matt was like, this character at this grave is named Josephine, or isn't it has a different name than the actual bride does.
oh shit.
Um, and like we didn't catch it at the time, and then until Matt was like, "Oh wait," I think it might have been it might have been Adam who said something about it. Like either Adam or Will might have said something about it, but like I think the bride's name is different from the name on the tombstone.
That would be embarrassing.
Um,
Um, but totally something I would have done. Because again, sometimes, yeah, it's Jacqueline, and the bride's name is definitely Josephine. Oops.
I mean, these things happen. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I know, for example, with the Beast of Jalen's Mire, I changed the name of the tavern to an in joke. Because originally it was called the Bacchic Goat because it's run by a
A Styre.
yeah by a Grindle, yeah.
Yeah.
But they but like as I was describing the Grindle, one of my players picked up that that the Grindle's description was similar to a Homestuck character, and I ran with that like as part of like and made that an important part of the joke and of the character. And in the like very last minute that I was right before I was going to get ready to start gearing up to get it submitted to the library, um,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that I hadn't changed all instances of the Bacchic Goat to the Broken Bow Inn. So I still had places where it was referring to the Bacchic Goat instead of the Broken Bow Inn, and I had to go through and replace it.
Yeah, and you cannot trust find and replace
Mm-hmm.
alone. Um, yeah, if you're going to change the name of someone, if you're just like creating NPCs off the fly when you're writing, take notes
Yeah,
because you will forget things. Um, and then yeah, always if you're going to change the name of something, think long and hard. Is it worth the utter pain in the ass that it is? If it was a place that got mentioned a lot, or a character that comes up a lot.
yeah,
I have found I was working on an adventure and I realized that it was all a bunch of dudes. Everyone was male. And I was like, all right, that needs to change. And then I spent 48 hours running myself in circles playing with pronouns.
yeah, and that was
And then that taught me the lesson to not make that mistake again. Um, I write with fewer pronouns now, which is just a good rule of thumb. And B, I make sure that I have like parity among my NPCs so that I don't have to play that game because that is a really really annoying thing to have to do.
yeah, that was something I had to do in the Beast of Jalen's Mire as well. Like I didn't have like I had male and female characters, but I didn't have any non-binary characters, and I wanted there to be non-binary characters. So I had to go back through and change characters' pronouns. Like Christy, the mayor, they they they're non-binary and they use they them pronouns.
Right.
Bellathor, the dwarf, uses he him pronouns or z them pronouns, which are neo pronouns. And like I don't think I changed all of Bellathor's pronouns um, to exclusively refer as z them,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'd set it up like in their profile or in Z's profile, he him or z them.
Right. That's something I added to when I was looking at kind of the way it was when I was dissecting um, Bitter Harvest before I wrote Missing in Molinsburg. I took kind of their little character descriptions, and I know I pronouns were something I added to the bottom of that. It's a it's an easy thing to add, um, and it goes a long way. And what I love is it pisses some people off.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I've got these two books on the DM's Guild that are just a bunch of NPCs using the um, sidekick rules, and they have their pronouns listed. And I keep getting like every probably twice a year now, someone will pop into the review and leave a note like, "What is this?" And
Right, and like
I know I'm doing something right when those people are getting irritated.
right, and like and that's like when I'm writing adventures, like I think it was Nacho. He was like, yeah, you should include pronouns as well in your persona dramatis. And
Mm-hmm.
at first I was like, I mean, I don't necessarily need to because I have them using their pronouns in the story itself. But then I was like, but then I realized like, no, actually I should put those in there anyways because that's like it puts it right front and center. Like this is the kind of adventure you can expect. These characters are going to have pronouns. This is written by somebody who is a trans woman, very openly about
Mm-hmm.
being a trans woman. So it became a matter of like I have to do this because I want to help set this as a standard in the industry itself.
Right. It's the same idea. If that cis people should put their pronouns in their Twitter bios.
Right.
Yeah, it's what one, two. It's what 7, 12 characters. No, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 9 characters. You can do that. Um, and because your dramatist persona is something you can look at it at a glance
Right.
and gather quick things about the characters, and it tells you a lot about a person. And so I I like that, and it it's easy. It makes your adventure more accessible. Um, from a very like cynical point of view, it scores you brownie points.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like easy brownie points, and it is the world.
Yeah. Like
Um,
when I first was reading the Zweihander core rulebook, like there was that section on gender and pronouns in the beginning, and like they're like, yeah, we're gonna use they them for like unless we're referring to specific characters. And
yeah,
that for me was the biggest selling point for like going, hey, y'all, Zweihander has this going on, and I like this because I hadn't seen it before. Other
yeah,
games they didn't address it that I had read.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Like they all write in the male pronouns.
Right.
Like I took that for Ballad of the Pistolero. I made sure to write all the game text with in gender neutral when I try to write without like assumed. There's so much text you can write without needing to assume pronouns and gender, and just take it out.
Yeah.
Just be. It's like we're writing. It's all technical writing, and like there are points where we get to be flourishy and use those humanities degrees that we have, but in the end it's technical writing, and you have to the thing that you're technically trying to get across is more important than your flowery prose. which is something I learned back in journalism school. It's like it doesn't matter how cool and fun that sentence is if it doesn't function to tell the story in the amount of column space you have, then it needs to go. Um, or that joke you're telling in a tease, if it, because you don't, there's just so much that we put in that we don't need. And it's all about finding what you need and paring it down to that. Um, I think the more adventures I read, the more I appreciate ones that are very like boom, 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 boom. If I want to read a huge, compelling narrative with, all this structure and twists and turns, and I'm going to read a book. I'm reading an adventure so I know how to run it. And it needs to be written with that in mind. I'm not writing a story so that the GM and me can be like, "Oh yeah, we had a cool story." It's a technical manual. Like a core rule book is a technical manual how to run the system, and adventure is a technical manual on how to tell this story.
And speaking of writing technical manuals,
Oh yes, we're supposed to write a scene.
we are supposed to write one scene. Do you have a particular preference for the scene you want to help write? Do you want to help write the
Oh,
first scene or what?
let's roll with. We'll write the first one.
Or that would be the tavern, right?
Yeah, I do love a good tavern. Um, so players are drawn into the conflict. Okay, so this is the brawl over the blood schnapps.
Yeah, it's so the original plot for that one was going to be like it was a physical brawl, but Peter and I we were talking last session, last time we did this,
Uh-huh.
and we decided that instead of it being like a physical brawl, it would be a verbal brawl between the Union character, who I believe is named between two Union characters, a halfling named Morgan York and a Atslin named Isaac Richardson. Morgan, what they want is they want to do sort of like the centrist, like we need to work within the system to get rid of the blood schnapps. Whereas Isaac, what he wants is he wants to get the blood schnapps out of the community at no matter the cost, with direct, if that includes direct action.
Got it. So, I think how I would, and then so that's the conflict that's going to then let the players into the greater thing. So I think if I was outlining this scene, it's so where do we start?
Well, I think a good place to start would be you mentioned you like to do the six senses, which are the five senses and witch sight.
Yeah, but I mean even before that, kind of just the little triangle, like what are my beats
Mm-hmm.
in the scene, so I know, and then we build the scene from
Mm-hmm.
there. So
So we know that the players have to.
I guess the resolution is pick a side.
Yeah.
Okay, and then gets heated. All right. So yeah. So now I've got my. It gets heated. The players pick a side. So that's our little triangle. And now we can do the where we're building with the senses. And da 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 da. Let me go pull up something that's got them written down. Because for some reason I can never remember the five senses.
We've got sight, taste.
Sight, sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch, and witch sight. So like sight, as we come in, what does the tavern look like? Is it dark? Where kind of are the people set? So like you come in, um, and then like how are the people kind of quick get a quick hit on like how the NPCs are kind of moving, how they, because you can kind of see how like do they address the players when they come in or do they ignore people? Like, you can learn a lot just boom with that one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of is it well lit? Is it crowded? for a tavern, because those are all going to be things that the players are going to question because they might want some shadows to hide in, or
Right.
if it's crowded, you're going to get your bard kind of face characters are going to try to interact with people. Is there some way we can make money in this tavern? Is going to be what someone's going to ask. And so you can immediately start to kind of click those off in sight. So like, how does so is this town hostile to the players, or are they kind of friendly, or do they kind of ignore them? You can immediately hit that in sight.
Right. So I think with Port Blood, I think it's kind of like they're kind of indifferent towards the players.
All right.
In
So we
general.
would say something like, this crowded tavern, the people glance at you, but they don't interact. So you get like a lot of sideways glances, I think would be a good phrase to use there. So this is a crowded tavern. I don't know. I feel like it has like harsh light, so it's got some. No, it's probably like is it like a fest hall kind of tavern? You
Uh,
think?
well, so Port Blood is a port city, so I was sort of imagining it's like sort of like the pub that like the people like the working class when they go off the
Okay,
docks, they sort
got it.
of go to
So
this kind of place.
it's dark, it's smoky, um, it's crowded. All right, so then we hit that the people are indifferent to you. So like you get a lot. It's like sideways glances. You get this like it's you can see smoke. You can see a lot of shadows. Probably like swinging candelabras or chandeliers are kind of a great kind of evocative thing because it gives, especially in a port tavern, it kind of gives you this sense of motion.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to put like a little bit of movement in all the senses. So like I feel like that way, I think that gives like we can have the crowd, the candelabras, and maybe like some smoke, and then identify where the bartender is, or maybe you see two people arguing, so that immediately in sight we've got quick, because the key to the scene is Morgan and Isaac arguing over the blood schnapps, and you can hit all that in like 4 sentences in sight, which is usually for me the beefiest of the entries.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should have Morgan and Isaac. Maybe they're like sort of off to the side, in a corner with an empty table nearby.
Okay.
Uh, which would maybe it's the only empty table.
Right, which then forces because that's our rail to
Mm-hmm.
get the players close. And then we can jump down to hearing, where they would hear they can kind of begin to hear the argument,
Right.
and you can immediately drop, if you want, a test. You can say like, I guess that's a little later in the scene, but you hear people raise voices arguing, because immediately your players are going to ask to try to listen,
Mm-hmm.
and you can drop a test with some, uh, so that then when they get into it, they can come in with some more information. But you're immediately dropping a nugget to something that they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you get the bustle, like clinking glasses and feet moving on floors.
Scrapes of chairs.
Yeah, scrapes of chairs. There's in one line I really like it's from Sin Eater. It talks about you can hear the spoons running along the bottoms of bowls.
Oh yeah, that was that because I'm sensitive to that kind of noise. Like just imagining it was enough to give me chills when I was listening to it.
I was hungry when I wrote that. I love um, I love food descriptions and
Right.
adventures. You can almost always tell, and you can tell when you're reading something I've written whether I was hungry when I was writing or not, because there's more food and there's more descriptions of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like yeah, you can. those are all those like very evocative bar things that just they bring you right into a bar scene. Um, like I try to, especially when I'm writing these setting the scenes, I try to picture a scene in a movie
Right.
that I've seen. So like a lot of times when I'm doing a bar, like a happy bar, I picture the prancing pony.
Mm-hmm.
If I want like a tense bar, it's that scene in the fourth season of Game of Thrones where it's the Hound and Arya in the tavern and they're arguing about the chickens.
Right.
Like that's my like tense bar scene, like kind of a touchstone. Um, and so like I have a lot of those like sitting in reserve for when I'm writing a lot of my setting the scenes because then I can pull from those very quickly. And I've got a lot of sensory feel about those. Um, like smell, um, so like you're gonna be smelling the food, the crush of the bodies. It's a port city. Um, is it on a river or is it like on a big port?
I imagine since it's an intern since blood schnapps is getting imported, it's probably a port on like a seaside port.
Right. So then you're gonna have that salt smell. That you're gonna smell the ocean. You're gonna get all that kind of mixed in with the press of the people and the sweat and um like if it's smoky, you're gonna smell that tobacco smoke, and it's all you get all those lovely kind of mixed smells that come in. Um,
Yeah.
and smell is a great way to also help if you've got a crowd and you want to get that feeling of kind of oppression of the crowd. You can smell, especially if you're in a place with a lot of workers. That's something you can smell, and so you can. I love finding ways to convey information with a different sense because it hits home when it hits, um, as opposed to just there's a crowd. It's like you can smell the bodies of the people as they press against you is more evocative, and so that's one thing that's great about using the setting, the scene when it's just senses.
Right. So
And then go on.
so far I have for sight we've got it's a crowded tavern where people are giving the players sideways glances but not really saying anything to them. And it's dark and smoky, and there's a candelabra swinging. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in a corner near the only empty table in this bar, there's an Aztlan and a halfling, uh, who they seem to be rather irritated with one another. You can hear the scrapes of chairs, the clinking of glasses, the scraping of knives along wooden plates, and a tense conversation between the halfling and the Aztlan. And then for the smell, we have the stench of day old fish and the salt of the sea breeze. A
There
small,
we go. That's a good one.
the smell of tobacco wafting into your nose, mingling with the smell of hard laborers, or of hard labor
Yes.
rather.
Right. So you immediately you're in this tavern so far. Like I can see it. I'm already we're already getting a good feel for this place we're in. Um, like taste, you're gonna be able to kind of taste the food. Again, it's kind of connected to smell because like you can a lot of smells you can taste
Right.
just on the air. Like is this place um like is it really humid? Because if you're in a town that's got a lot of humidity, you can feel all those kind of smells.
Right.
They kind of metastasize in all of that humid and like just like walking and talking gets can get gross because you can just feel it.
Right.
Um, I'm sensitive to that coming from a humid climate, and I think that gets left out. Sometimes when people are describing swamps, they forget just how oppressive high humidity is.
Yeah.
Probably because so many adventures are written by people who live in Seattle.
Right.
They forget that I'm writing about a swamp. I mean, literally, it needs to be crushingly humid.
Right. I used to live in Louisiana for a time, and
Oof.
we didn't live quite out in the bayou, but we didn't live in the city limits for a while. And uh, some mornings you wake up and that fog is so damn thick,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot see in front of your face.
Right. After you've peeled yourself off your sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like I feel like that's a sense that gets lost a lot. And we all write from our experiences. So I my things tend to take place in a lot of hot climates, and because I'm used to it and I know how it feels. So
Right.
it's very easy to describe. And so I think we could go with that because you're going to be getting the. I think maybe like there's a sea breeze, so like maybe it's a little cool.
Hmm.
Because if it's close enough to the water, you get a good breeze, even if it's um, really hot.
Right.
Because as soon as you get away from the coast, is when, even in a hot place, that's when the heat really gets you. But a nice sea breeze can cure everything,
Right.
which uh, which I learned living in the Caribbean when, like, there are whole establishments that have huge holes in their walls because they want to take they want that breeze. So maybe this bar has like some larger open shutters,
Right.
like big window shutters. So we could pop that into the sense, and then that's what's bringing the breeze through. So you're getting that. Um, we're back on uh, sight and kind of, and that's more of touch because you can feel
Right.
the breeze. I don't always write these in completely in order. Sometimes you pop around.
Right.
You're just trying to, you're standing there and you're just trying to get a feel for your location.
Right.
Um, so you get that feel of the breeze. Um, yeah, with taste, I almost always kind of mirror smell, because those go hand in hand so well.
Right.
And then touch, like, wow, how does the wood feel? Like, is everything new or is it kind of smooth? Is there like rough stuff? What is the ground? The feel of the ground as players are moving through it. Um, so like this bar, probably everything is kind of smooth because it's had hands running over it for years and years,
I like that.
and it's got that. Everything's probably a little damp if we've got open windows towards the sea breeze, because even if you close it and it's kind of warm, everything is just going to be slightly damp and smooth.
Right.
Um, and it's not like you go, oh, this is wet. It's just there's just uh, excess of moisture. Um, but it's a visceral feel like that, just like little slimy kind of moist that everything can have. Um, like the so that I think kind of fits. We're hitting all those points, and then which site? If there's nothing that's going to be gained by magic in a scene, I just sometimes say you detect nothing
Yeah.
because sometimes there is nothing to pick up with which site. There's not. But what if we have a? It's the Union, and what's the other group?
Uh, s-
Uh,
so we have three major players, factions. We have the Stevedores
right.
Union,
Steelers Union.
the Shipping Guild, and then the Mayor.
Okay. So for which site, since this is the opening scene, we want to have as much kind of going on as we can. What if we've got someone who's using a spell to kind of, I'd have to look up a spell, but so we kind of, you're getting a sense that there's magical eavesdropping
Hmm.
kind of going on. So like what you would be seeing kind of in the witch site is almost like I would kind of describe, you see like sound waves moving in a singular direction as they're kind of pulling them towards them.
Hmm.
Because I like, when I describe witch site, I like to let it be very. weird.
Very weird and vague.
Yeah, it's weird and it's vague because I don't want to say, oh, you see a guy over there, he's glow. It's not Witcher sight from The Witcher 3 where your, target glows.
Right.
Um, because it's a tabletop game and we can be more vague because players can ask us questions.
Yeah.
So I think that's how I would describe it. So we've got someone who's either working for the mayor or he's an independent contractor of secrets.
Right.
No.
An information broker.
Right. And so like he's using magic to listen, and so we're seeing kind of sound waves moving in a direction, almost like they're being scooped up.
And uh the cool thing about Zweihander is like even if there isn't like an actual spell in the core rulebook, it's easy enough to write one ourselves.
Oh yeah. Um because they're just kind of because there's the what I love about Spyhander is that everything is in a rigid format.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so rigid that it stifles your creativity, but it's rigid enough that you won't break the mechanics
Yeah,
by creating something new.
yeah, and that's like that. That's something that I really appreciate about it, about Zweihander, is because like I'm like able to read this information that's presented to me and go, oh, okay, so this is how this game works. This is how this mechanic is supposed to work,
Right.
and I can then replicate that mechanic, uh, and do my own like twist on it, like um in Lowborn number 4, for example, I have an ancestry,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to a new ancestry, and I was able to like look through it and go, okay, I want to have this thing here. How would they handle something similar like this in the actual book? And
Right.
so I used again, I was using that as the basis for my information on how I was using the stuff in the core rulebook to inform how I would homebrew this stuff.
Yeah, it's very very easy to. There's very little like secret sauce that's not explicitly written out in the rule books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's very easy to homebrew. So then we've got our setting the scene, and then I guess right at the top of the scene in the little description we would write, the players are here. They're going to, there's an argument. They're going to get involved. They're going to learn about the blood schnapps. They'll be kind of encouraged to pick a side, as like our little description that the scene has between the name of the scene and then the setting the scene box.
Right, the summary.
Right, the summary. So then I would probably they're at the table. Um, I would probably throw in a test where they can begin to pick up like an eavesdrop test because I love that that's a codified skill.
Yeah.
And anytime they're in a tavern, I know they're going to want to eavesdrop.
Right.
And okay, that's not important. And so I try to always put that in. So just I come up with like 3 or 4 bullet points where like, 2 of them are going to be very much on point things you need to know. So like we'll hear them arguing about the blood schnapps. We'll hear one from them. We get a snippet of their argument. Maybe someone else who's talking about the effects that this drug has. So either they're going through withdrawal or they know someone who is, or they're looking to score something else that's very much related to the blood schnapps. And then probably 2 things in this eavesdrop test that are irrelevant. They're just flavor. Like someone's having a shipping delay, something that could be construed as a clue but isn't,
Right.
and then something that's funny. Because I love like in an eavesdrop test, one of the things they find to just be goofy. Like that's where I put a joke in or a reference because not everything you're going to listen to is going to be on plot.
Right.
Um, so then I would have this feel like maybe someone's complaining about their soup or they're having something embarrassing going on. Just the fourth one's kind of a joke. And then if it's, I definitely know it's a mystery, I might have a fifth one
Mm-hmm.
that I will note. I'll put a notation next to that critical success. And like they will only get that piece of information if they roll a crit. And now it can't like be you have to have this to succeed, but if you get it, you're coming into dealing with these two people arguing at a much on a much better footing. Um, and then, well, we can write those in a way that if they don't just eavesdrop, but maybe they're like someone goes and like they're doing rumors or something to kind of carouse, they can get the same information from just chattering with people.
Right. I'll be right back. My pencil died.
Oh no.
But that means it's a wooden pencil, so it's a dull. So I need to get a mechanical pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So we wanted two of the points to be plot relevant.
Right.
So the first one, we're thinking that it's they hear the Atslin and Halfling, that's Morgan and Isaac, arguing about how to handle something
The blood.
the blood schnapps.
Yeah, like I would probably just write 2 lines of dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
one for each of them. Like, you know, we have to, if we just regulate it and take care of people, that'll won't be as big of an issue. We can't just get rid, it'll
Right.
never go away, but we can take care of it. And it's like, no, the only way to solve this is we throw everyone who's addicted in jail and we execute the people who are importing it.
Um,
Um,
I feel like with this particular one, rather than making it so like rather than making the conflict being rehabilitation versus uh,
enforcement.
retribution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what we would want is maybe like we want we'll have not Isaac, we'll have Morgan wanting the regulation and rehabilitation, while Isaac specifically what Isaac wants is to get rid of it completely
Okay.
and then work on rehabilitation.
Got it. So then they would probably be arguing about uh maybe like do we just tax it? Like, I don't know, we just regulate it. We'll stymie it. And he's like, no, we turn their ships away. We impound their cargo.
Mm-hmm.
So they're arguing kind of in that back and forth. But you just two like snippets of dialogue that they're hearing, like probably not even complete sentences. um, so that the GM also doesn't have to try to. Um, dialogue helps you get into a character more than
Right.
at the same time with your because these guys are probably only going to have like a sentence of description,
Right.
like sentence and a half of description. It's in the adventure style guide, so we'll know their race, their profession, their gender identity, and like 3 defining characteristics and their ideal. And so like that's a very basic bit, and then you can learn a lot from like a little bit of dialogue, which will then help the GM play them. So I like to always be sprinkling dialogue into adventures,
Right.
because people talk, and the GM has to play all these people, and so it's great to give them a little thing to work with as opposed to just these very broad kind of ideas for characters.
Right, which was like that is one of the issues I have with like the Pathfinder Second Edition. I picked up one of the modules, one of the one shot modules that they have produced, and like they're perfectly functional, but like I barely know anything about the characters and how they should react, other than like, oh, the sheriff in this town, because it's kind of a sleepy town. The sheriff here doesn't really do much and won't like will prefer that the players handle the investigation.
Right.
and like, but like I don't know anything else about them, like, because I don't have any dialogue. I had to come up
Yeah.
with all that dialogue off the top of my head.
Hmm. So I always like to give a little hint of dialogue, because a lot of times your GMs are going to fall back on like three characters that they're good at,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can help break them out of it, that's always helpful. Because like I'm going to fall back on either the belligerent hick sheriff, a Russian, or someone who sounds like Pete Helms' Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm not given direction and I have to like on the fly an NPC, and every GM has those like three characters that they can just pull,
Yeah, there's three stock
and
characters.
yeah, that they can just pull and they're perfect, and they pull them all the time. Like you just get used to it, and if you can help break them out of that with just some dialogue, then why not? And then yeah, we have one that is kind of sceenish, and then one that's silly, and then maybe the critical one um I don't think we need that one actually at this point, because the characters don't know enough to know they've heard something incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we don't want to overcomplicate our sequence. And then so they're at the table, and I'm trying to figure out how to get them into the argument. Because I mean that they'll probably just like insert themselves, because uh, players are smart enough to realize that's the hook that we've baited,
Right.
or that's the hook we're dangling, but we have to bait it as well.
Um,
'Cause-
what what might be useful is maybe Isaac, the Atlan. Maybe like he specifically turns to the players and says, "Hey, you, what do you think about this?"
yeah, that's always very easy to just kind of grab and pull them in. That works. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I think that works. It's just like they turn and immediately, because whenever you're having an argument, you want to find someone who agrees with you.
Yeah.
So we just drag them right into the conversation. Uh, and then once we've dragged them in, we can then set out the kind of each of them presents their side, and that's how we learn about the blood schnapps. And then we would probably look at the social interaction rules to kind of get a feel for the flow of this, since this scene is about social interaction. There's no combat, because I assume this isn't going to come to blows because they're on the same side.
Yeah, they're politically speaking, they're aligned. Like they both want to handle the blood schnapps.
Right. They have the same goal. They have the same goal. Just how they want to get there is different.
Yeah.
So this is all social interaction, and it's just the players here are kind of learning the stuff.
Let's see. So I know that
Okay.
we had the bullet points that Morgan and Isaac are arguing, and we're gonna write dialogue for that argument.
Right.
With the eavesdrops test, the players overhear a conversation between I wrote down between a woman and her friends discussing how her wife is distressed and suffering from blood schnapps withdrawal.
Right.
And then we had there were two more points we wanted. One of them I had was a jokey one, which is like
Right.
a dwarf is grumbling about the quality of soup in the tavern. But I don't remember what was the other one.
Sometimes you can put one that's for like a critical, so like something where they really learn something important.
Okay, but we
Um,
decided we're not gonna do that.
yeah, I don't know if we need that one here, because we don't want to. Since this is the intro scene,
Right.
we don't necessarily want to overcomplicate it, and the players don't have the background knowledge yet to really act on that. You don't want to seed clues too early,
Right.
because then they get forgotten. Um, I think so. Then what they're arguing. Hmm. I'm trying to think what's the to get us to the resolution. Kind of the players realize they're tasked by character services. So what if
So
um
what if like after the players have chosen their side,
right,
the one who they chose against sort of leaves the tavern, like walks away from the tavern, well, walks away from the tavern completely,
right,
and the one who now becomes the hook character
gives them the job.
gives them the job. Yeah, like hey, you know, this is. Do you want to maybe help us with this? You know,
Right, and they offer, like, if we find the source, it's lucrative, it will help the town. They the things that gets all the types of characters interested.
right,
It's there's altruism, but there's also money that could be made.
right,
Um, and your less savory characters are already seeing a way to circumvent altruism, uh, because there's money to be made. So and then yeah, so like they have the argument, they make their points, the players get to argue in. Um, I might, as I'm writing this, have lay out some facts about blood schnapps that Isaac and Morgan know. Like, they don't know necessarily where it's coming from in the far. They just know it comes in on like boats and
right,
what it does, so that the GM has a quick set of like kind of at a glance facts about the situation, even if we've covered it in the like setup and
right,
the adventure pre-material, so that they don't have to then flip back to it. They've got it right here, and these are the things that it helps them from accidentally giving the players too much meta when they don't need it.
right,
So it's like, well, what do Isaac and Morgan know about the situation to help, and that helps you then role play the GM role play the argument. So like what like kind of just a quick like hit, like, oh, how does blood schnapps work? What does it do? How does it taste? Where is it kind of coming from? What have we done to try to stop it? Um, so that you have just like factoids, like 5 or 6 little
right,
factoids uh, about the situation at hand to help the GM um, run the conversation. Because again, the players are going to start asking questions, and you need to be able to have answers,
right,
um, without then having to backtrack your answers or realize that, you know, because you don't want to have to do all uh, that nonsense when we can help. We can give them that, right here with like 70 or 80 words,
right,
and then and then the hook, and then they get the hook, and that's basically the scene, because then where they go from there dictates scene two.
right,
Um, because this is that simple intro, and I always try not to overthink the intro scene and not to make it too info dumpy.
right,
And if you want to dump info, you need to hide it. Because information is like vegetables, and your players are all 5-year olds who don't want to eat their vegetables. So you have to hide the vegetables in the meatloaf.
right,
And so, like, this argument between Isaac and Morgan is the meatloaf, and all the information about what does blood schnapps do, where's it from, how can the players take advantage of this, or how can the players stop it. Though that's all the vegetables, and so we're kind of wrapping it in something that's exciting, and so it's not just
right.
the GM talking at the players.
Which is
And
important. Which is
yeah,
something that's important that you have to keep in mind when you're writing an adventure. Is you don't want your
mm-hmm.
GM just talking at your players or at their players.
Right. Because if I wanted to listen to someone just talk at me, I'd go watch a TED talk. Um, so I think that's kind of that's the meat of our scene is that argument. So we have the factoids, and then we have the hook at the end, which is the job. I mean, this is a low stakes scene, so there's not like this height, because the this adventure doesn't start in media res where we're, you know, busting something up
Right.
or whatnot. It's got a slower, gradual in. So we want the opening scene to reflect that. So we nothing needs to be big and high. It's all kind of it's talky and low energy isn't the right word, but it's low stakes
Right.
because it's just the players choosing kind of how they're going to go. And I think that we just so we don't need to overthink and put a lot of complications in. Just enough at the end of the scene where the players have like three options of like places they can go to explore to try to figure out more about the blood schnapps. They need to know the three groups that are involved, kind of how it's coming in, and what it does. And that's the information they should leave the tavern with.
Mm-hmm.
Because then where they go next is going to then start to really well, I guess, and they also leave the tavern kind of with an idea of how they want to begin to approach the problem. Are we going to try to, you know, help with like a regulation, or are we going to go ham in trying to stop it, or are we going to try to take advantage of the blood schnapps and find who's bringing it in so we can get a piece of the action?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we just leave them with the information they need to then make just the next decision, and then that's where things really will. Because scene two is where things are going to kind of blow up,
Right.
and I would probably put an action beat in scene two, um, to really like drive home some stakes, but not in scene one. Scene one is about setting the table for this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think in anything like this, you either set the table and then you have an action beat, or you have an action beat and then you explain why the action beat happened.
Right. So for this scene, I have we have all the senses we already read,
Mm-hmm.
and the eavesdrop test, which we already read, uh, and then we have Isaac pulls the characters into the argument,
Right,
and Isaac and Morgan present their cases. Isaac wants to destroy the trade entirely with direct action, while Morgan wants to simply just regulate and decriminalize the trade. Uh,
right,
both of them agree that the blood schnapps, people who are addicted to blood schnapps, need to be helped and rehabilitated. And Isaac and Morgan both know that it's being imported by the shipping gold. But Isaac believes that if it's regulated, it will help destigmatize a lot of the problems surrounding blood schnapps, uh, and with the people who are involved in it, and also provide a boost to the local economy,
right,
which mirrors similar arguments with like cannabis legalization in the real world.
right. I think one thing as we're writing this that would be a good thing is to have our real world touchstone.
Mm-hmm.
So like, is blood schnapps pot or is blood schnapps heroin,
Um, I
or
pers-
somewhere something in between? Kind of,
I personally feel like it's probably somewhere in between. Because like I have been personally affected by like family members who had issues with harder drugs.
right,
So that's something that I'm personally uncomfortable with writing myself and dealing with myself.
right. Um, so then I think like we don't have to like codify that in
Right.
the adventure, but as writers, we kind of because we pull from real world things,
Right.
you know, kind of the is this a less because I think as soon as the adventurers realized that if it was something harder, you would immediately get like these wire vibes as opposed to kind of um we're just kind of looking for something that helps people relax and is addictive, but
Right.
not destructive in the same way. And then you start to ask a lot of socioeconomic questions, and how we don't necessarily need to go that
That deep.
deep with our drug, with our blood schnapps,
Right.
um, which already sounds silly, and I love.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
picture I picture Klingons drinking blood wine out of what is clearly uh, where they've repainted motor oil bottles,
mhm.
um, because I have to at least once go back to Star Trek.
Uh, but we do know that Morgan believes that it's too dangerous to let it keep going
Right.
because they don't know what the oh wait, I have my names mixed up. Morgan is the one who wants it regulated. Isaac is the one who wants it removed.
Right.
Isaac believes rather it's too dangerous to like just regulate. Like it needs to be. They need to. They don't know what the long term effects of being addicted to blood schnapps is.
Right. It needs to be tamped down and just taken care of.
Yeah. Um, and whoever the players side with at the end of this conversation, the other one will leave, and then they will get more information about the blood schnapps and the town itself from the person who they've sided with.
Right.
Um, and so what they'll find out is they'll find out who the shipping guild is. They'll find out what blood schnapps is and where they could possibly go for more information.
Right. Because we just need to kind of hook them into like one or two other, like where they're going to go next.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where yeah, because this is one of those adventures that kind of does those straight ball, straight, where you get a hint of open, and then there's a thing that constrains you back onto the tracks open, and it pulls you back.
Yeah.
Um, and so here we're setting up the open,
Yeah,
and then
for the next scene.
right, scene two probably is we would find a way to have all three people in a singular place, so that, or factions in a singular place, so that they could then learn more, get more information, and then that's where like an action beat happens.
Yeah.
But that's scene two.
Yeah, it's scene two. It's probably not gonna cover like we're not gonna cover that now because we're at the 2 hour mark.
Yeah.
That's maybe that could be a future episode or something. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. We have a very good solid foundation here for this adventure.
Yeah.
Way more stuff. Like, Sean, do you have anything you wanna plug? Show off?
Um, if you're looking for a good horror adventure and you're playing Spyhander, I recommend The In Between, which you can find on the Grim and Perilous Library. It's it should take you about 10 sessions to get through, and I think it's a solid adventure. I was trying not to reach back to the shelf. If you're looking for Wild West fun, um, and you like the way Zweihander works, you can check out Ballad of the Pistolero, which is it's a quick start kind of rule set, um, but it plays a lot like Zweihander.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's also available on Drive Through RPG. You can get nice glossy print copy. Um, and when it drops later this summer, check out Flames of Freedom, because that's going to be really, really awesome.
And where can folks find you on the internet, like social media stuff?
You can find me in the Zweihander Discord, and I'm always on Twitter, to the detriment of everything I'm trying to accomplish around me. Um, my handle is something awful. Um, I should remember what like that is.
It's your last name.
At Damie Sean,
Yeah.
because I didn't take Twitter seriously when I signed up, and I let it generate my Twitter based on my Facebook. Um, And anytime you have a 2-word last name and you let something auto generate, it will always take the second word and assume that's your surname. Um, so the moral of the story is actually pay attention to what you want to be called on social media and don't just sign up on a lark.
Yeah.
But I'm constantly on Twitter and engaging in things I shouldn't, and I'm up at all hours of the night because I work stupid hours. So I get like Pacific time Twitter as they're going to bed, and then I get East Coast Twitter as they're waking up, and I get English Twitter in the middle of the day.
Yeah, I also have odd hours too myself. Like I think I have woken up one time at like 2 o'clock in the morning and was like, "Hey, I have this thing I need help with," and you were like, "Yeah, I'll help you," and it was amusing. I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't realize you were up yet."
Yeah. Because I go to work at 3 a.m. So
Yeah, and this would have been about 5 o'clock for you.
yeah, I'm sure I was. Cause I'm done and I'm waiting for something else to happen at around that point.
And you can find me, of course, on Twitter at DMIringDB, also on Twitch at DMIringDB. And like this came in, this is out. You can get LGBT in a Grim and Perilous World by Lilith Grishaw. It's really cool, and it's for Zweihander. You can find it on the Grim and Perilous library. And I did the layout work for this, but Lilith, she wrote some amazing stuff here. So you can get it PDF or solid copy. And for myself, I also have on DriveThruRPG, Winking Witch Press, just released my first thing, Dooming Your Dungeons, which is kind of like what we're doing here, but instead it's specifically for dungeon-based adventures.
Yeah, I needed to dig into that because I think there's so much that we could learn from video games that we to take back to tabletop to make it all kind of a full circle. Because
Yeah,
they took everything from tabletop, and I think there's a lot of things we could pull from video games.
yeah, and like that, like we even touched on that a little bit here in today's episode, talking about
Mm-hmm.
the different paths that you can do in Dishonored, Deus Ex, and Thief.
Yeah. And like talk to your players in video game terms because that's something they probably know
Yeah,
really well. So just don't be afraid of video. It's all game design, and we shouldn't feel like one is better than the other. There's things that we can learn from all of it.
yeah, and so yeah, thank you for being on,
It
Sean.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so.
Oh wait, before
Oh, oh, right, the puppy.
I did promise.
You did promise the puppy. We are about to see Sean's puppy.
This is Tilly. I just woke her up, so she's a little squirmy.
Oh, Tilly.
But I did promise a puppy. Okay.
She's adorable.
Because streams are better with puppies.
They are. Yeah. So we won't be back here next week. We'll be back here 2 weeks from today. Hopefully with Nacho. To discuss combat because it sounds like that's what the next thing is going to be about. It's going to probably be about combat.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I'll be. Oh, I'm also probably. I don't think it's this. No, it is next. It is this Friday, I think. I'm gonna have to double check my schedule. I might be on the Defenders of Kobold for Mutineer Zero. So that's gonna be a fun thing.
That does sound fun.
Yeah. So yeah. Thank you all and have a nice day.